Sure introduce Pint a lot. I'm part of the organizing committee, but my name's Hebah. I'm a fourth year undergrad in physics and technically electrical engineering, but here I'm a physicist. And I do research in quantum computing, which is pretty fun. Oh, and I'm a big part of the Gender Minorities in Physics group here at UT. And this is...
I'm Sabiha. I'm a physics and astronomy major at UT and also an outreach officer for Gender Minorities in Physics at UT.
And today we're going to be talking about a history of women in physics. So, to start, question for y'all, who are some of the most influential women in physics that you can think of off the top of your head?
Hebah.
Yes. Love her.
Emily just stepped in here.
That's because you gave a talk about her a year ago on this very stage. Yeah?
Marie Curie.
I love Marie Curie so much. Yeah? You, good one, good one, good one. Any more? Yeah. What? Don't get me started on Vera Rubin. I could go on a tangent about her. Yes. Yes. Well,
Yeah. All of you have got some really good names of really influential women physicists in history. And if you do a simple Google search, you can find sources online like the Wikipedia page for women in physics listing all of these really wonderful people.
ooh, your water fell. Yeah, and these are amazing women, and we need to remember them. This is a really awesome paragraph from a paper that's a focus on gender and STEM. So thank you so much to Satari and Sandifer for being a source for all of the sources I'm going to send here. And this is in the introduction of the paper, but it talks about how women's underrepresentation in STEM is a pretty well documented thing. Women face challenges of teaching and service overload, devaluation of their research, poor mentoring and insufficient role modeling, high visibility and misogynistic stereotyping, exclusion from informal networks, and fewer opportunities for collaborations, and tensions between career and family. And the crazy thing is that this paragraph has 23 different sources. And this is just one paragraph in this entire paper.
Yeah, so this is a really well documented phenomenon that women in physics aren't very welcome. So while we can find a lot of women that were historically influential in physics from simple Google searches and popular sources put together by people, some of the really influential women in physics are missing. The pictures that we have here. And it's really odd because they're all very, very important people in the field.
Yeah. So, how did this oversight happen? Like, I haven't heard of a lot of these, or I don't recognize a lot of these faces. So, well, I do because I made the talk, but before this talk, I wouldn't have recognized it.
Yeah, so one of the reasons is that the effect of implicit bias is amplified for some of these women because of their intersectional identity of being people of color and women at the same time.
I also want to make a note that being in a part of the LGBTQ plus community also adds another layer to this intersectional identity. But we don't really, when making this talk, we struggled to find a lot of sources in the history of physics. But there's this really awesome paper that kind of addresses this, which talks about the experiences of current LGBTQ plus physicists today. So, yeah, it's a history of women in physics, but it's kind of a more accurate history of women in physics.
Okay, so let's look at some of these women that we might not have known of before. So first we have Wang Jingyi. who was a Chinese astronomer during the Qing Dynasty in the late 1700s. Her research interests were in pedagogy, which is teaching in physics and mathematics, analyzing the motions of the moon, and describing lunar and solar eclipses using her own sky targeting. During her time, people often believed that eclipses happened because the gods were angry, but she was one of the people who said that actually the lunar eclipse is definitely because of the moon, and this was from her own research. She published a lot of works in her very short lifetime, some of which are Dispute on the Precession of Equinoxes, Dispute of Longitudinal Stars, and the Explanation of a Lunar Eclipse. The International Astronomical Union named a crater on Venus after her in 1994, centuries after her death. So this next person is someone that Hebah and I were really excited to come across. Her name is Hebah, and she got her master's in physics from Calcutta University in 1936. She published 3 consecutive papers in Nature, but was forced to discontinue her research because of post-World War II shortages. So 7 years after her discovery of mesons with DM Bose, C.F. Powell made the same discovery plus some further research and eventually won the Nobel Prize in 1950 for it.
I like to think about maybe if she was funded or she had the resources to continue her research, she would have been the second woman to win a Nobel Prize right after Marie Curie, which is kind of interesting to think about.
Powell acknowledged Bose and Chowdhury's contribution in his work, and Chowdhury later on got her PhD degree from the University of Manchester in 1948. Her thesis was on extensive air showers associated with penetrating particles, and she worked in the cosmic ray laboratory of another would-be Nobel laureate, PMS Blackett. And during her lifetime, she was not elected as a member of any of the 3 science academies, despite being fully qualified for the position. And the strange thing is that she's not well documented even in books in India about women in physics and history because she was one of the earliest ones. And I'm Bengali. I grew up in Bangladesh. She's Bengali too. I'd never known of her before I started doing research for this presentation. The final person that we have is Sabiha, who was the first female Egyptian nuclear scientist, the first woman to earn a doctorate in atomic radiation, and the first woman to hold a teaching post at Cairo University. She was a Fulbright scholar in America, and one of the first people welcome to tour nuclear processes in America, the first foreign people. And she's famous for saying, I'll make nuclear treatment as available and as cheap as aspirin, and this was in regard to cancer patients. She organized the Atomic Energy for Peace conference, and although she was offered the opportunity to stay and work in the US, she decided to return to her home country after she was done with her fellowship. She was only honored posthumously by the Egyptian army, and that's about it. So, all of these women, you can see that they're not just people who happen to do a little bit of physics for fun. They were serious. They made leaps and strides in the field of physics.
They're not talked about as much.
Yeah, and it would make sense for us to know about them, just like we know about Marie Curie and all the other physicists on the Wikipedia page.
So, this is a visualization we made of the women of physics that you kind of like see when you look at the Wikipedia page. So these are a lot of the physicists. So we kind of began with this timeline in the beginning of our talk. And after we've learned about all of these other physicists, our timeline kind of looks more like this, which is interesting.
There's so much more here. It's so much richer, it's so many more discoveries to like explore and find out more about. And you'll notice that there's more people here on the earlier end of the timeline. This isn't even to scale. Like these people are from like centuries into BCE, and there's a reason for this, and it's that science, physics, and astronomy have always been important to many cultures and religions around the world.
Yes. It's also interesting to note this big gap right here. What happened? I don't know. I don't think history really knows. Okay.
No one documented it.
Well, we think this is a culture problem. The women who make it in physics are the ones who are able to tough out a hostile environment that men and white people do not face to the same degree.
They're not like the other girls.
Yes.
But yeah, there's so many women in history and today who are kept from doing physics even though they want to and even though they have the ability to.
And this has grown to be a part of the culture of physics and part of the discipline of study. I really love this quote. This is from Dr. Fatima Abdurrahman, who is a researcher at UC Berkeley right now. And this is from her PhD thesis, actually. We can think of the cultural beliefs of physics and astronomy as the stories told in this community about how physics is done, who physicists are, and what makes a great physicist. Implicit in these stories are how physics isn't done, who physicists aren't, and what makes a bad physicist. So this talk is really a call to action. Let's actively take steps to get rid of this gap in history.
And we leave you with this quote by Dr. Chandra Prasad Weinstein, who wrote The Disordered Cosmos, A Journey into Dark Matter, Space-Time, and Dreams Detroit. Highly recommended book.
It's one of my personal favorites. I really love this book so much. So, access to a dark night sky, to see and be inspired by the universe as it really is, should be a human right, not a luxury for the chosen few. So thank you so much for coming to this talk. I want to give a special thanks to the undergraduate community of physics and astronomy. This talk really is a collection of a lot of the advocacy work our boards have been doing in the department. That's what this graphic is. GMIP stands for Gender Minorities in Physics. ASA is Astronomy Student Association, and SBS stands for Society of Physics Students. So thank you again so much for coming to Schrodinger's Pint today, and we're happy to take any questions.